controversy over mode of primaries rages as APC gears up for the party primaries ahead of the Kogi and Bayelsa governorship elections. And the presidency says there is no IPOP threat for the president as he attends the conference in Japan. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye. Let's kick off with the news about President Buhari's trip to Japan. The president is now in Tokyo, where he will be participating in the 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, otherwise known as TESAD 7, holding in Yokohama between August the 28th and 30th. Meanwhile, the presidency has dismissed any possibility of threats to the president's visit by the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra IPOB group. The presidency says the group's threat has nothing to do with President Muhammadu Buhari since he arrived Yokohama, Japan on Monday. They're asking Nigerians at home and in diaspora to disregard what they describe as concocted stories backed with spurious visuals of any protest or harassment of the president and his team. At the conference, President Muhammadu Buhari will appraise Nigeria-Japan relations and is expected to also hold a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and meet the chief executive officers of some Japanese companies with investments in Nigeria. Let's check out some other stories we're following for you on our political roundup.
President Muhammadu Buhari has arrived Tokyo, where he will be participating in the 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, otherwise known as TESAD 7, holding in Yokohama between August the 28th and the 30th. At the conference, President Muhammadu Buhari will appraise Nigeria-Japan relations and is expected to also hold a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and meet with the chief executive officers of some Japanese companies with investments in Nigeria. The people of Kogi State are gearing up for another governorship election, and in line with Independent National Electoral Commission INEC's timetable and schedule of activities, political parties are to choose their candidate before September the 5th. On their part, the All Progressives Congress APC has concluded the screening of its aspirants ahead of the party's primary election coming up on August the 29th. Kogi governorship aspirant Ms. Natasha Akpote is insisting that Nigerian women must grab the opportunity and play active role in the nation's politics. Speaking at the National Secretariat of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, Ms. Akpote explains that aspiration will birth a new dawn in Nigeria when she becomes the first female elected governor in the country. The human rights activist adds that her ambition will give hope to other female politicians who always take the back seat when it comes to governance.
Women have contributed greatly in shaping the democracy today. And we are not pleading this time around, we are asking our due right in nation building.
Former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu has called on his supporters to forgive those who attacked him when he visited Germany 2 weeks ago. The senator was warmly received by his supporters when he returned to Enugu for the first time since the incident, made excuses for the miscreants, saying they acted on the influence of alcohol. While debunking claims that he went for the New Yam Festival, he assured the people that he will remain resolute and committed to the welfare of the people, irrespective of the circumstances that has presented itself.
Now to our discussion of tonight. Before the 2019 general elections, the issue of mode of primaries became a major issue in the All Progressive Congress, APC. That matter tore the party apart, with states adopting different mode, and that largely impacted on the situation in states like Rivers, Zamfara, Lagos, Ogun State, and ahead of the Kogi and Bayelsa elections, a similar controversy is already brewing, where some people had already even gone to court. Some people are using native intelligence to go into this matter. Today, the Federal High Court in Abuja has dismissed 2 suits filed by some members of the All Progressive Congress APC in Kogi State challenging the party's leadership and its choice of mode of primary to be adopted for selecting a candidate for the November the 16th governorship election. The first suit prayed the courts to determine the true leaders of the party from the 2 sets of members of the party in the state claiming entitlements to its leadership. The second challenged the decision of the APC's National Working Committee to adopt indirect primary in choosing the party's candidate for the forthcoming governorship election. The plaintiffs were of the view that the choice of the mode to be adopted for primary elections could not be. Taiwo dismissed the suit for being statute barred on the grounds that it was not heard within the 180 days stipulated under Section 285, subsection 10 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In the second judgment, Justice Taiwo held that since the second suit was predicated on the first suit, which had been dismissed, it was unnecessary determining issues raised in the suit on the grounds that they had become academic. The court affirmed APC's decision to conduct indirect primary for the governorship election. But wait a minute, everyone. What does this outcome of this court decision, what does it mean, especially for Kogi State APC? And in Bayelsa State, it appears some stakeholders are anxious about the situation. Look, let me show you this so that you know what INEC is planning, the timetable they have, and what the political parties need to be working on, because it does look like as APC learned from the mistakes in Rivers State, Zamfara State, Lagos State, and a few other states that they had a major issue in the last election. Take a look at how this will pan out ahead of the November the 16th election. Take a look at some of these important dates according to INEC. November 16th is the election date. The deadline for party primary is September the 5th. The commencement of campaigns is August the 18th, 2019. Same thing for Bayelsa State. So number of registered voters in Kogi State. Well, let's leave that for a moment and let's focus on some issues relating to the primary. We'll be breaking it down for you, get some legal perspective, and get some stakeholders to talk to us on the program tonight. Joining me to give a legal sense, of course, and a sense of an insider perspective also, is Mr. Daniel Bwala, a lawyer, is in our Abuja studio, and here in Lagos studio is a former member of the House of Representatives and a chieftain of the APC in Bayelsa State, Mr. Bolous in Yamawe. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Let me get your view, Mr. Bwala. Give us a sense of what the implication of this court judgment means for APC, especially in Kogi State, for a start.
Well, thank you for having me. The implication of the verdict of the court is that the party will proceed to conduct indirect primaries. But as a prelude, indirect, direct, or consensus are recognizable strategy or recognizable processes through which leaders emerge in political parties. It is in the constitution of APC. It is also in the Electoral Act. And as a premise, the 2 suits that went to the court, what I'm not clear about is whether the 180 days as stipulated in the alteration in the Constitution was exhausted, because there is a distinction between 180 days under which judgment must be delivered before the primaries or election, or 180 days within which judgment must be delivered from when the action was commenced. It seems that the 2 actions before the court, one was premised on the legitimacy or otherwise of the delegates that will go to the primaries. And so if you have that challenge, then it will be needless for you to agree that the primaries in the second suit should be indirect. But the court having decided that that action was statute bar, it means the second suit is no longer necessary. It means that the legitimacy which was challenged has now been recognized by law. Now, it is within the perfect right of a political party, and especially the National Working Committee. If you look at Article 13 and you look at Article 20 of the APC Constitution, it is clear it is the National Working Committee that will set the procedure for the conduct of primary elections.
Viewers who are wondering what is indirect, what is direct primaries. Let's give you a sense of what this means. So in an election, before an election, the party needs to decide who is a candidate. So for a direct primary, so we're breaking it down for you, the definition of the two. Direct primary is a preliminary election at which candidates for public office are chosen by direct vote of the people instead of by delegates at a convention or a congress. Indirect, on the other hand, is a delegate election. Party members elect delegates who in turn elect the party's candidate on their behalf. Delegates are a democratically elected group of voters elected at party congresses. So this came up earlier on in before the 2019 election. Let me come to our Lagos studio with Mr. Bolous Indiamowe, who in Bayelsa, so we understand that there seems to be some controversy. What has the party decided on the mode of conduct?
Well, the party up to this very moment is yet to let us know exactly if Bayelsa will be indirect or direct. But the general opinion of a lot of us in Bayelsa is that it should be indirect.
It should be indirect?
Yes.
You want delegate election?
Yes, because our terrain is mainly riverine, almost 70%. So if you are to follow the direct, definitely you are creating room for total breakdown of almost law and order. Because by the time a ward that is 5 hours speedboat to drive and bring results of who and who have been elected in those wards, or what is their result, anything can happen on the way. But if you select these delegates and bring them to a central confine where there is security, people are in the hall, the contestants address the hall or whatever briefly, and then you tell the people to vote, you will be able to see exactly the results.
What about the views of some people who think that in a delegate election, in an indirect primary, it's easy to manipulate people? Because in the past, people will make reference to how delegates were being bought over.
Well, that is a societal problem we have generally. Even if you are doing the direct approach, something like buy-over will still happen. What am I saying? You will still see people spending money in the various wards to get their votes. In some other climes, they call it lobbying. In whatever way you want to say it, definitely spendings, expenses will be made. So in the process, using that as a yardstick, we are not talking of human lives. How do you protect the people? So how do you ensure security?
Sorry if I'm about in. Which one would you say is more democratic? For those who are a member of the party but they are not delegate, who think that by being able to vote for the candidate of their party, they are more part of the process. What would you say to these kind of people?
Well, the truth is that the indirect is even more democratic. You know why? The process of selecting those that will represent you to go and do the election, they are also selected from the various wards.
Are you afraid that the party might choose something else other than what you in Bayelsa State are thinking about? What
we are saying is that if indirect is good for Kogi, indirect is also good for Bayelsa. Even more important for Bayelsans, because the water terrain, the water level of Kogi is not like us in Bayelsa. So if indirect is good for, and thank God our two elections are going together. So why not give what is good for the Kogi for us also?
All right. Let's take a breather. When we come back, we'll go back to Abuja studio to ask Mr. Bwala the part of the law which says that the party at the center has the power to decide which kind of primary, and in a situation where the party said before 2019 that any state chapter can decide which mode of primary, but which way would they go when they decide, and how would they decide that? We'll break it down for you. The APC internal dilemma on party primaries. Join us again, everyone. We'll be right back. A lot of Nigerians who are looking closely to what is happening in the ruling APC had assessed and said most of the problems of the party began with the issues of the mode of primaries before the 2019 election. So if you take example of the states like Rivers, Ogun, Zamfara State, some of the states where major problems emerge from deciding on the kind of primaries they would have. And this has also started ahead of the Kogi and Bayelsa governorship elections. Stakeholders are worried about the mode of conduct. In Bayelsa State, our guest tonight is saying you do not know what mode of primary they will be having. Let's get this conversation forward. As the APC learned from its past mistake before the 2019 election, is it taking any step to make sure that what happened in 2019 election does not happen in Bayelsa and Kogi State, especially in the heels of a judgment of today from the Federal High Court? My guest tonight on the program, Mr. Daniel Bwala, a lawyer, and also has some insider perspective on the runnings of the party APC. Also, Mr. Bolous Indiamawe is a former member of the House of Representatives and a Bayelsa APC chieftain. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for talking to us tonight on the program. Let me quickly go back to our Abuja studio with Mr. Bwala. Mr. Bwala, give us a sense of what this means altogether. It is given that a party is empowered by law to decide which mode of primaries to go. But in this sense, this seems to be a very peculiar situation for the APC, considering what happened before the 2019 election. Do you foresee that there might be a repeat of what happened in states like Zamfara, Rivers, Ogun State, playing itself again?
Well, you know, there is this thing called strict provisions of the law or party's constitution or guideline, and there is another thing called justice for all. Let me tell you my own view and my definition of direct and indirect primaries. Indirect primaries is a procedure where more corruption will produce the ticket bearer, while direct primaries is a procedure where less corruption will produce a ticket bearer. In all the places where indirect was ordered, the incumbent retained his seat because he has the money, he has the force, and he has the security to do that. In all the places where direct are conducted, the person who emerged is not necessarily the governor. I will tell you the reason. In the places where indirect was ordered and the governor didn't win is because the party interfered. Now the question is whether we want to grow as a political party or want to remain stagnant. If you have a situation where if indirect is ordered, only one person is a winner before the contest, and direct primaries is ordered, probably 5 or 10 people can try their luck. Where is the justice of the case? I have had a personal conversation with the national chairman of the party, and his passion is to come to the point where the party will necessarily have direct primaries. And let me tell you something, Sheun, and very, very important. You see, if we want to grow, it doesn't matter whether it is APC or PDP or any political party. Direct primaries is the best way. In America, they conduct both direct and indirect. Indirect primaries is electoral college. There was a state where indirect was conducted in the last election, where the statutory delegates were held up somewhere. They were paid money and held up somewhere. And different sets of people were given the tag to appear as though they are delegates to vote. So if, to me, although political parties have powers to decide whichever, if we want the justice, let me tell you one thing that can give cause of action to anybody going forward. Because the party has not decided that direct primaries should be across Nigeria or indirect across Nigeria, it is on case-to-case basis. State A can do direct, State B can do indirect. It will give any state that is aggrieved the cause of action in court to also say that what is good for the goose is good for the gander, and to ask the court and to say why was it conducted in State A and not conducted in State B. So the legitimacy is there, but if justice is what we are looking for as a political party, in my view, let us begin to think direct primaries, where the popularity of a person will be tested by the generality of the people. Let me just lastly poncho what the other friend of mine in your studio was talking about, Bayelsa, when he talked about the demography of the place, the geography of the place, the difficulty of doing direct primaries. Anybody who criticizes direct primary should as well criticize the general election, because direct primaries is a mini general election. And so if we value general election as the recognizable way by which leaders emerge in Nigeria, It is high time the constitution of political party be amended so that direct primaries will be a procedure where popularity of candidates are tested.
Mr. Ndiamawe, your reaction to that? Is your case peculiar?
Yes, it's peculiar. Now, you see, thank God he has mentioned the need for us to, if possible, amend the law. You see, if you go by the recent election that was even done, if you look at what happened to our Niger Delta areas, a lot of people lost their lives. And know, if you check your records, you'll see it. And you know our security architecture in this country is highly encumbered because even the police force to monitor the system, to monitor and secure the people, is not easy for them. They always call the military to come and assist. What I'm saying is that we are really, really deficient in our security work, which is keeping a lot of Nigerians now frightened of even their next on movements. You are aware of what I'm saying. But what I'm saying here is that if we must meet up, pending when we strengthen our laws, as he has so said, for now, we will not want anything different from if Kogi is due for indirect. We also want, because our own state is unique. Let me say something.
For some of you and your colleagues in Bayelsa APC, what are your major fears? Should direct primaries happen?
First, should direct primaries happen, we don't have the mechanism to even administer direct primary. What are you going to do with direct primary now that you don't have? It's like the number of persons you will mobilize to go down and stand and conduct. I'm talking about the officials that will do the primary. That is where the problem starts.
Why don't you leave that to the party at the
No,
center?
the party law.
Because the party at the center knows that, isn't it?
The party at the center knows that, one, we don't have a good ward registers. So in Bayelsa, we have a PDP government in power. So if you are not careful, the PDP elements can even come and claim to be party members in those wards and even vote a wrong candidate to help themselves for tomorrow.
So let's close the program now. And I'll give you 20 seconds to give us your final thoughts on what you think should be the way forward.
The way forward is simple. As it stands now, in Bayelsa, we want indirect. Because if we do indirect, we will know the number of delegates that are called in.
All right.
And when we do that, the election will be very transparent.
We need to leave it
and
at
if
that.
it is transparent, whoever wins, the rest persons will not go out and start having 2 or 3 candidates.
We need to go.
And finally, we'll run into
Mr. Bwala, just in 20 seconds, in similar manner, your final thought, please.
The way forward is that in all the states where the incumbent is not the ruling party, indirect primaries, like in the case of Bayelsa, is permissible because there is no comparative advantage of one person over the other. So in FCT, there is no governor. Direct primaries is fantastic. And you can even do indirect.
All right.
So going forward, all the places where APC is, there's no governor in the state, then indirect can be perfect. In all the places where the governor is APC member, conducting indirect is just declaring the winner before the match.
Okay. Well, that's where we leave it. I hope that it's a good one for us to lay the premise on what will be a very, very keenly contested race in the governorship elections in Bayelsa and Kogi State. We're monitoring the situation in Channels Television. That's our show for today. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm Sean Kimbale. Bye-bye.